Wherever you like this game, hate it, or you just haven't played it yet, you probably know by now that the general review of this game is just that it's bad. But I find it hard to believe that a game that was created by the same people who created Arkham Knight would create a game just so awful. So I'm going to give my opinion after finishing this game of where I think this game shined the most and where I think it was just really let down. So to begin, I want to mention storytelling. Now, I actually thought this game had a really good story. I quite liked it. I was invested in the characters, and I thought it was interesting. I wanted to catch that fiendish brainiac, but it was quite an interesting story. I did like it. The characters was what carried this game the most, in my opinion. I mean, the characters were really well designed. You could just tell they put quite a lot of effort into them. I found that Boomerang and Sharky had to be my favourite ones. They were very funny. But putting characters and the storytelling aside, combat was by far my favourite part of this game, and also my least favourite at the same time. It's actually a skill to create something so fun and so garbage at the same time. I don't know how they did it, but they proved it was possible. So for starters, I just want to say that the movement in this game was really good. Like when it came to fighting, I had so much fun just zipping around with the boomerangs. I also really liked the wide variety of weapons that you could choose from. I mean, you could have snipers, miniguns, shotguns. That I thought was really well designed. You could also get different levels as well. I really thought combat was where this game shined the most. But the thing which let it down, and I mean really let it down, was like there was only 5 enemies to fight. And they weren't even creative either. They were just aliens with lasers. I bet you've never seen that before. It's truly innovative. So that's why I think combat was just good and also awful at the same time. I mean, it's still nothing compared to how bad the boss fights were, which I will get to later. So aside from combat, I did actually really enjoy the gameplay. As I said before, the movement was really fun. It was one of them games to me where you could just spend your whole time just running around the map and just flying everywhere, kind of like with Spider-Man, how you could just, instead of actually doing missions, just keep swinging everywhere because the traversal is just that fun. So gameplay was really smooth though as well. I didn't have any performance issues. I know that quite a few people did, which is probably because, from what I've heard, it's actually a live game, which I genuinely didn't even notice until after I finished. On top of that, the graphics were just really stunning. I mean, it is a game made in 2024, so it is to be expected at this point, but the graphics were very nice. I really liked them. My biggest complaint in terms of graphics was by far how many they were. I mean, it was good. I liked it. It was shiny and very, very pretty. But oh my god, it looked like I had just stepped into the middle of an arcade. There's just so much everywhere. In addition to just the enemies being really boring and just plain repetitive, the missions were as well. I mean, you were either doing a mission where you'd have to destroy a bunch of crystals and then that would let you destroy an incubator. Those were fun. And then there was escort missions. Oh my god, they were escort missions. This whole game was just escort missions. That I really didn't like. I mean, I was surprised I didn't have to escort the Joker back to Arkham Asylum, because clearly that's where this game was made. The amount of escort missions is just pure lunacy. So I do think that this game could have done with a wider variety of missions to do. I mean, especially, I didn't play the side quests too much because from the ones I did do, they were just somehow even more boring than the main quests. That and the side quests just felt really pointless because very early in the game I got a gun which was just really good and I just used it for the entire playthrough and it was like, what is the point in giving me such a great gun at the start of the game? I also thought it was kind of weird how the Riddler, instead of like, I mean, to be fair, I didn't do all the quests, so I can't really say too much about this. But from the stuff that I did do, there were time trials. Why is the Riddler giving me time trials? It just doesn't make sense to me how, like, why the Riddler was giving me time trials. I mean, maybe you got more riddles doing all his quests. I don't know. But from the first one you do, it's literally just a time trial, and it's like, why? But ignoring the unforgivable sin known as escort missions, I've thought that the gameplay was okay. I mean, movement, very fun. But everything else was just kind of repetitive and just doing the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again. I want to briefly mention multiplayer in this game as well. Now, the multiplayer I actually really did enjoy. I liked how you could play with up to 3 different friends. You didn't have to, but you could. So that definitely earned it points, in my opinion. I mean, it was cross-platform as well, which is also really cool. I like that. I like how more games are becoming cross-platform. I like how that's a trend that they kept. So bravo to Suicide Squad for doing that. So I like that. It's one of the few things this game can actually be credited for. No matter how good the multiplayer is, it doesn't make up for how bad the boss fights were. Especially because there weren't that many boss fights. There was just the Justice League, which, I mean, it's in the title, I guess. That's what you should be expecting. But give me a couple more fights, please. I'm starving out here. But aside from the fact that there just weren't that many, they were just really uncreative. I feel like that's a very common theme with this game. It's just very unimaginative and lacks all sense of creativity, especially because the bosses would have like 3 attacks tops, which I don't want to say too much to avoid spoilers, but the boss fights just seemed really boring and unimaginative, especially because there weren't that many to begin with. And even with the few bosses that they did have, it still wasn't enough content, especially for a game made in 2024. Like, that is just a crime against gaming. There were about 2 attacks for each boss, and that was it. And they would all follow this same formula of just dodge a few attacks, press counter. Oh, look, they can take damage now. I mean, fair enough for one of the boss fights to do that, but for all of them, it's just kind of like, come on, have some variation, please. I honestly think the Eggman fight from the original Sonic games had more attacks than all of these bosses put together. There were just that few. The only thing that I can actually say I did like about the boss fights was just the fact that they had really pretty colours. The visuals were very stunning in this game. I will admit I really did like the visuals in this game, but it's just not enough to make up for the just lack of all creativity and just any sense of variation. Especially the final boss, though. The final boss, not good. Now, normally games will put all of their effort into their final boss, and they will aim to make it the most memorable boss fight, the coolest boss fight, the best thing you have ever seen. But not Suicide Squad. They decided they wanted to be cool and quirky and not like the other game developers. So instead of making a cool shiny boss, they instead, drumroll please, they copy and pasted the first boss's movesets. That was it. Like, it was just Flash, but purple. What? Like, it's just like, why? And I think in an attempt to compensate for just the sheer lack of a moveset, they just stuck a bunch of the cannon fodder enemies onto the field and just kind of said, fight these guys. And it wasn't one of those where you could just ignore them and go for the boss. You would have to fight them every time. And it's kind of just like, oh, come on. You go from fighting a boss with 2 attacks to fighting 2 enemies with 1 attack. You find yourself just doing the same stuff over and over and over again. And that, I think, is a very common theme throughout all of this game. Aside from movement and graphics in terms of the boss fights, the only thing, and this was only in the final fight, is you could get a cool car with a cannon on it, which I had quite a fun with just flying around shooting all the enemies. That was okay. I liked that bit, but it doesn't forgive them just copy and pasting the first boss fight onto the final boss fight. It's like, well, come on, at least add like a couple moves of his own from just all of Flash's moves, and that's it. But overall, aside from all the bosses just being extremely bad, I think that this game is one of them with a really good concept. And it had so much potential. A cup runner full of potential.
With a little bit more effort, and I don't know where this game went wrong, but if it was budget, a little bit of a higher budget could have gone a long way with this game. I mean, the main issue with this game really is just the fact that it's repeated a lot with the same enemies just being constantly recycled, as well as the fact that there's not that much creativity. I know I've said this quite a lot, but I just really want to hammer in that point that this game could have done so much better if they just spent a little bit more time, gone back to the drawing board, so to speak, and just added more stuff for the player to do. Because right now there's just not enough, and it's just very, very dull.
I did really enjoy the story. I like the characters as well. They were pretty funny at times. And the moveset was extremely fun. So if you are someone who just likes playing fast-paced combat and just don't really care about repeating the same stuff or doing boring old missions, then you'll probably like this game. Just be prepared for doing escort missions and escort missions.
And you get the point. There's a lot of escort missions.
That's pretty much everything I have to say. I would give this game a solid 5.5 out of 10. Now, I know that probably is a bit high for most people. Like, I think the general review is like a 3. But I do still think that the combat and the movement is still really good, and that I do think there is potential. There is a lot of potential here, but they just did not capitalize on that. But yeah, that's everything. Enjoy your day.